the largesse doctrine of Romulan ships, of their warships. Everything in TNG we've seen so far, and the Scimitar and the Valdor has been really big. So it is a little bit immersion breaking to have this flagship be so small. And maybe there's reasons for that. Maybe because Romulus was destroyed. They don't have the resources to maintain these big bad ships anymore.
Although obviously every other dry dock in the Empire was fine. So 99% of the dry docks were unaffected by Romulus. So I never buy that because everything still works.
That is a separate debate. I mean, you could make the argument that Romulus was the major industrial hub of the Empire, but that's all headcanon. It could be that they just didn't have the funds to maintain.
I mean, any empire would have more than one.
Now, if you compare the bigger warships, let's say if you use a real world comparison, the Soviet Union having their big Typhoon class submarines and their big, Kirov class battlecruisers, and with the collapse, they had to dry dock them all because they just didn't have the funds to maintain them, and they would, later they would have one or two deployed at any given time, but it wasn't something that they could just do anymore. So maybe the whole Romulan fleet had to change because of the destruction of Romulus, but that was never explained in the series. They never really did go into those issues.
And Sam, going back to something you said earlier, that bigger's not always better. They kind of learned the lesson from JJ and stuff. They didn't, though, because I would have been more impressed with a fleet of 24 ships instead of 218. So they did go bigger in a small way. They went bigger with the fleet size.
That's the Discovery lesson, which was we want thousands of drones are more impressive than 3 ships. But I think anyone would say the Battle of the Scimitar is more impressive visually and thematically than the Battle of Discovery Season 2 finale. 4 ships over who the hell cares how many. But what do you think of the grey one, the first one we saw? Because that is, throughout the season, after the first episode, that sort of replaces being the one that's always around Romulan space. And then, obviously, that's the one that's close enough to then send a fleet of.
They look like birds, and that's cool. But there needs to be something more, I think. They seem a little bit flaccid. Or a
Good
little...
word.
I mean, they're kind of thin and flimsy, and, they're... To me, okay, we just need a generic Romulan ship. It seems to me like the production team's like, okay, we just need something flying around in the background that looks like a bird ship. I have to say, it does look a lot more believable and realistic than the Federation fleet because of the variety there. If you see what I'm saying.
No.
Yeah, not quite.
There's no variety in either fleet.
Well, in the Romulan fleet, you actually have. You see fighter wings going out. You have these 2 different ship designs. In the Federation fleet, it's all one single ship design.
No, it's 2 with a 3rd variant, but...
Well, okay, so which
watch our episode. That's a whole different debate. I very explicitly go into it. Don't worry, just go watch that. It's fine. There's actually several variants. They're just too subtle to really be good.
To me, the Romulan fleet looks better. I think the overall point I'm trying to make is that the Romulan fleet looks better and a little bit more varied than the Federation fleet.
It looks like a flock of birds. there's really I don't see the variety.
Yeah, I won't give points for that.
I see like two styles of ships.
In fact, without the glows, it's just one big wall of grey. There's actually less to look at. At least the Federation, everything's kind of different. And you can see the orange nacelles and the red nacelles and.
I mean, the one good thing is, they did launch some snake head fighters, and there was a little bit of a tangle with those and the flowers and stuff. But I mean, that's not really variety to me as far as a fleet goes. But
and they were already in this scene, so they're already in the season, so it's not as if they're new. They're just sort of there. And I wonder why the Admiral got her own ship. I mean, it was so under featured, that why even give them. It's like give Riker a custom ship. That'll get you more kudos than they spent money to make that ship. Why not give, that seems weird now. But it still confuses me. Why make the primary warbird that you're representing grey? Why have no windows? Why only have 3 glowies at the back as warp and impulse engines? Why have no visible bridge window? Great, but
it is kind of there's some green, like if the light hits it a certain way, it seems to be greenish, grayish, but
we all know how green a Deredex looks like, and you can't be mistaken with that.
Yeah, and the Valdor as
They
well.
didn't try basically. They're not trying to be green. I mean, you can even see in this shot of the Borg cube with the drone platforms around it, like they're glowing green, and so there's obviously green in the scene, and these things are just grey.
I think it was probably them trying to differentiate the green from the Borg cube, and they don't want the ships to look green because the fans won't know what's going on. It's probably a stupid decision like that, unfortunately.
Now it looks like the hammerhead from Space Above and Beyond, more than Romulan ships. If you remove the little beak bit, it wouldn't be at all Romulan.
I have to say though, is it really that big of a deal that the color of the Romulan ships has departed from that really, really emerald green things that we saw like in TNG? I mean, is that really that big of an aesthetic?
Not really, because if you look back at TOS, it was white. You look back at the antique warbird we just looked at, it was more of a gray color, which suits that style of ship. And then all of a sudden TNG, all the ships are green.
Not just green, I mean really green. I mean, it's like it just yells green at you in TNG, which I think Probert was saying that wasn't his original intention. And I don't really have a problem with that. Maybe I probably would have toned down the green a little bit in TNG.
It's probably just more that, you know, anything in CG is an intentional choice. So they chose to make the entire Romulan aesthetic removed from the entire Romulan aesthetic. So it's not the fact that it isn't green. You know, if it had been like primary green with grey plates, you could say, that's brand new hull armor, la la la. But it's the choice that says we don't want it to feel Romulan. We want our own thing. Whereas they could do very small things to make it whatever. It's more of a signal to the audience rather than, you know, because we only see Dederedex in DS9, which is one style warship, the best, the biggest. That doesn't represent the entire fleet. Clearly, how could it? You know, and then you get other little ships that again are so different. So clearly, if there's non-green ships, that's fine. Just, you know, give us a little bit of connective tissue. Otherwise, they could. I mean, you could easily say that was a stolen, just like the Bird of Prey says, stolen Klingon or the other way around. Say it's a stolen Tellarite fighter because it's grey and it looks nothing like a Romulan.
Right. Yeah. I see your point as well. I mean, I would have liked them to be a little more green than they are, or at least.
Well, and then we get the Commodore O's ship, or General O's ship, whatever you want to call her. It's got a unique shape from the top. It doesn't feel like a bird just because of the way the wings are swept, but again, there's no visible warp nacelles. There's nothing that says any kind of intimidation. It could be a ship of the week from Voyager. It's just not a fantastic design at all.
You know what I think somebody's going to probably try to say is that, well, the wings are now the warp field generator of the ship.
Add a glowing stripe on the front then or something, just to show that, because we're in the Star Trek universe. There's certain aesthetics that we have.
There is a brand of Star Trekness that has not been maintained here. I mean, you could make a little bit of argument that it was sort of maintained in Discovery, but in Picard, it's like the brand that is Star Trek is first the brand for spaceships in Star Trek is other than the original the antique Bird of Prey they brought back. There is no Star Trek brand to any.
Well, the Starfleet ship at the end is clearly Starfleet and clearly Federation. It's just not a very good one. I mean, you can't deny. But speaking of glowies, you know, the very one of the first shots of it in the last episode at Warp, there's a ton of little green glows, and you can tell they mean nothing. Like, they're just green for the sake of green, whereas, one single strip of warpness. So they obviously did think to add glows, just they're all completely, you can tell they don't mean anything.
Yeah, it's just glows for the sake of glows, which doesn't work. Not even weapon ports or anything. They're between panel lines.
Which is funny because all the other ships don't have glows. The grey ships have no glows for the sake of glows. There's a massive disconnect. It's almost as if two teams built these models at a different point. Like the first team built the first ship, who loved Romulans, loved Star Trek, built it, great. And then this other team came in, did what they were told, didn't care, delivered a non-final model, they called it final. And then this last team said, we'll make a Romulan ship, we'll make it look different, but sort of Romulan. Because I think the mothership thing at least is interesting enough to say, you know what, this is a secret ladies special, amazing, custom, advanced dreadnought thing. You know what, I will give her that. It's just got a bit of a Romulan vibe, not really, but just a little bit, but just like a hyper sleek stealth, I kill you vibe. because she's not the normal sort of person.
I just wish it was bigger. I don't want extremely big like JJ or Discovery kind of went, but with it at warp, you look in that window, you can see her in there.
Oh, it's tiny,
and it's not a big ship, and it's just not impressive. I'm sorry. That's why they throw 218 of them in, because they're like, hey, the ship's not that big. We got to make this an imposing fleet.
And you can see it right next to the other grey ships, and those were also about the same. Like, they're still small, so those are fighters. I mean, if we think about that last scene for a second, you know, think about what they've got to use. They only have the ships they had in range. They weren't prepared for this massive attack at a moment's notice. They had whatever they had, and what if they only had, you know, the equivalent of Paragon fighters around the Borg cube, because they could build them easily. So they only have, you know, 80 light cruisers, very light, and then her ship, which is more of a medium cruiser, but nothing big. And it's numbers. She knows one Deredex could wipe out 50 of them really easily, but how do you amass an army? What she amassed was the perimeter defense force of the Borg cube and her own
That's
ship.
what it seems like. Yeah, I like that thinking.
You know, this goes back to sort of the sensationalism aspect of modern Star Trek, and that we applaud them from getting away from bigger is better all the time. However, it would have been nice to have, like we were saying before, a fleet of 10 ships, and, you know, 2 or 3 of them, or maybe even just one, be a Deredex or a Valdor, and and you could take it. There are Deredex CG models available, and you could probably take that asset if you can, and just give it, you know, do a little bit to match the mood of the space scenes in Picard, and that would be glorious, you know. And then you would have, and then, you know, this goes also the Federation fleet. I'm not even sure. You know, the Federation fleet is a different topic, but it seems like the ship production was rushed, especially as you go further down the season. The ship production, the ship design seems to be really, really rushed. And it's like, okay, there's a generic Federation ship, there's some generic Romulan ships, let's throw them up there, and boom, we got our space scene.
Yeah, and if I was doing the end of battle, it would have been the custom Admiral ship, which would have been a really very, very good looking new Romulan ship. Like, that was the new, you know, celebrated ship, and you'd have 4 Deredexes, 2 Nurixons, and then some smaller light cruisers. And so the big ships look big, and they're kind of holding the flanks, and then everything else would come in, and you'd exactly know what you're dealing with. And the fact that O would come in with this much smaller ship, you'd think, oh, that must be a powerful ship, because it's new. It can go toe-to-toe with the Deredex, and that is, you can see it on screen, 10 times bigger than her ship, a la Defiant versus, you know, Galaxy. That sort of vibe. That's what I would have done. And maybe 10 ships max.
That would have been great. Of course, the sensationalism of 200 warbirds. Oh my God!
That do nothing.
200 Deredexes, and we would have been like, oh damn. But what's your overall view of the way they treated Romulan aesthetics for ship design in Picard?
The first several episodes, very excited to see a lot of Romulan world building and ships coming back, but we didn't get, by the time we get to the climax of it, it didn't really deliver, and we see Romulan ships that sort of break my idea, my immersion of what a Romulan aesthetic is really all about.
I think that sums it up great, because I think Samuel and myself both have the same kind of thought. Not big enough, not unique enough, not Romulan enough, and just kind of, as you said, I loved it flaccid.
Well, it's a season. It's a season that promised to deal with the Romulans and the evacuation, and then by episode 4 they completely abandoned any thematic ties to anything, and they just focused on these small things. And it's like, that one topic could have been an entire season, and don't bring these things up if you're not going to use them even in the smallest way. I mean, we never even got a sense of what the political situation is in Romulan space, not a single bit, apart from there's a movement they call whatever, and it's like, okay, they're clearly okay enough to have a big fleet of ships and a project which is no pressure, but no Romulan neutral zone, that's disbanded. So all these weird things that they obviously just sort of cared less and less as they went on. It feels almost as if the writer was like, came in for the first 3 episodes and then left, and then they had other people trying to pick up the pieces and said, well, we can't focus on stuff because we didn't know what he was going for, and the ships feel similar to that, and we should just have seen that first ship in the final battle at least. That would have been some variety, although it would have been a black ship, a grey ship, and a green ship, sort of. Would have been a weird mix visually.
Yeah, well, but at least there would have been more variety. Anyway, guys, I think we'll call that quits for this episode. It has been great having Resurrected Starships on. Please go subscribe to his YouTube channel and check out his content. He does some great stuff. Support him if you can, and just tell him, put in the comments that you went over there because of Trekyards, so that he knows who's who and who's new. And if you want to support us, hit like, comment down below what you think of the Romulan fleet. Do all the things you're supposed to do, subscribe and all that jazz to us as well. So until next time, guys, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Hawkins, and guest.
And Alan from Resurrected Starships.
See you later, guys.
Bye.